Are we on? We're good?
Hello?
So they're telling us that the room is sold out, so good for you guys. We're going to get started 10 minutes early, and maybe you can get to the data night out a little earlier than everyone else, right?
Or a lot more time for questions. Who's excited for data night out tonight? Anybody? Who has control of the weather? Can we get some warm sun, please? It's not what I packed for. I don't know about you. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us late afternoon here before the big evening. Hope you enjoy our session. Brief introduction. I'm Jason Mack. At JP Morgan Chase, I work on the business side, where I lead an analytics team responsible for everything around customers and marketing programs. And I've been a Tableau user since 2007.
me, I'm in IT. So I lead the IT Center of Excellence for Tableau for the entire corporation. So I support users all over the globe. I used to work in the business, so I do have some sympathy for my business users about their challenges and their struggles. I've been a Tableau user since 11 and certified since 2013.
And Steve and I both started at JP Morgan Chase in different lines of business, and we work in totally different locations. So I work in Delaware.
I'm in Ohio. Any Buckeyes out there? OH? All right. Yeah, no one here understands. I'm sorry. So, and if you do, there's a lot of distrust for us. That's okay. So 5 years ago, Jason and I got together and we realized that we had entered an organization that had some cultural challenges, to say. Does anyone have that familiar struggle? All right, I think it's probably why you're here. Their approach to business intelligence was very traditional. They had all the power. They knew everything, right? So IT is supposed to have all the answers. And, we used traditional tools. We used all the big ones, Cognos, Business Objects, because it gave us that control. We wanted the universes, we wanted the framework models, we wanted to control our users and their experience in building things. And all we really needed from them was requirements, and we would be able to deliver. But sadly, and I don't know if you've had this experience, it took a while. Okay, maybe a long while. Maybe at the end of the day, after 6 months, they really didn't even need what we built. Wasn't necessarily working. That was a challenge that we entered into.
And on the business side, us users, or as we call them, people, I don't know.
Sorry.
We were staffing up teams of analysts that existed mostly because we felt we couldn't get what we needed from IT. And these analytics underground, so to speak, were basically forging their own way with tools like Excel and SAS, replicating data and solutions thousands of times over. And so being an early adopter of Tableau, from my previous role, I knew I wanted to get that kind of a tool into their hands.
Yep, and so we entered this environment, and ultimately I knew there had to be a better way. We had to give a balance. Being a bank, a financial services institution, we needed reliable controls. We had to have control. We wanted to make sure it was accurate. We wanted to make sure we knew what our people, our business users were doing, and we had to govern it. That was our mantra.
And on the business side, I wanted systems that were flexible so that my analysts could help themselves in solving the problems that they need to. I want to empower these employees who may not know how to write sophisticated code to leverage data in their decision-making processes. And so now, 5 years ago, in 2011, there were exactly 0 Tableau licenses at JP Morgan Chase. Fast forward to today, and we have thousands of users, from analysts, managers, all the way up to our top executives using it every day across our global organization.
So, the challenge. Transforming this culture really has been quite an adventure.
Quite an excellent adventure.
An excellent adventure. Very good way to put it, Jason. And today we're going to share that story with you. We're going to talk about the challenges we've had over the 5 years of working together and what I've seen for many years, even before that. The lessons we learned along the way. Not everything went as perfectly as we had hoped. We've learned a lot, but we never gave up. And hopefully some of these things can apply to your organizations. We're going to share the real issues and our real solutions, try to give you some practical tips on how transforming a culture can be accomplished, and Tableau is a powerful tool to help with that.
As Steve and I were reflecting on our Tableau journey over the past 5 years in advance of this conference, we actually realized that it bore a bit of a resemblance to one of our favorite movies from the 1980s. 1989 film, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, starring a young Keanu Reeves. Maybe you've seen this one.
Does everyone think of Bill and Ted when you think of J.P. Morgan Chase? Maybe now you will, I don't know. Jamie thinks, but...
So if you haven't seen it, Bill and his buddy Ted essentially have to travel through time in this phone book and collect this cast of historical characters to complete a class project so that they can keep their band together and ultimately save the future of mankind.
Now, we're not saying that, we didn't have a phone booth, clearly, and we're not saying that enterprise BI is really going to save the world, but, there was a lot of important things that having a good model, a good culture of embracing this flexible technology, because really it was affecting, and as Jason said, today all stakeholders to the highest level to the end users are benefiting from this change. So it's been quite the journey.
And it might sound like a silly analogy, but stick with us and I think you'll see it's actually pretty accurate. So let's go back in time to the beginning so you can join us on our excellent Tableau adventure. So just to set the stage, it's important to understand that J.P. Morgan Chase essentially operates under two main brands. There's the Chase side of the house, which has the consumer and community banking business, so things like the retail branch you go into, credit cards, mortgages, auto loans. And then on the J.P. Morgan side of the house, the corporate and investment bank and asset management business. Now the important thing here is that all of these lines of business have a very high degree of autonomy. If you want to enact change, you have to prove success. You can't just go in and tell these guys to do something different because they won't listen to you. So you have to have a compelling reason to change and a proven better method.
And if you're not familiar with the financial services industry, we have a bit of regulations. Jamie likes to say for every issue that comes up, we have 5 or 6 agencies breathing down our neck. So that's the nature of our industry. And because of that, they really have a very low tolerance for risk. Trying something new, not their status quo. In fact, when we first started, we heard this all the time. This is just the way we've always done it. Anyone ever heard that when they've gone to try to affect change? We've always done it this way. Why would we want to change? So that was our drill, day in, day out, trying to find a way to get all these groups to embrace not only new technology, but a new way of doing business intelligence. So a little more background on me. My name is Stephen C. Hiddle, Esquire. It was a great movie. So my kids, I showed it to them. They're like, "Dad, really?" But, I did join Chase in 2007, and my sole purpose was to lead a team who was struggling. They didn't get it. They couldn't deliver anything. I was in student lending. They didn't have any reporting. They had some Excel files, but nothing that was consistent delivered, and nothing ever on time. They would get things months late. And I transformed that team. We were using a different tool at the time, but the process of how I approached business intelligence got the attention of leadership. And they asked me to move over to IT to understand that, hey, if you've done it in one group, can you help us across the whole organization? With one main objective, to ultimately find a better way. We got to have a better way to solve this, or we're just not going to be successful. So the IT status quo. You guys know the process. Waterfall. It works, right? Spend months getting requirements, getting those users who don't even really know what they want to write it all down. And then get sign-off from managers who weren't even in the meetings. You're laughing, but it's real, right? And then we give it to a group of people who weren't there to design a solution. And then once you get that signed off, someone else builds it. Sound like a recipe for success, right? And we wonder why it took months and months and months to even get something in their hands to prototype. And almost all the time, the business moved on. They were like, we're done. We found another solution. And unfortunately, it wasn't our great solution that we spent all this time on.
So I was recruited into Chase in 2011 to stand up an analytics practice in our marketing operations organization, and had quite a shocking moment when I first arrived, and felt like Ted here, right? They don't have Tableau? What? I forgot to ask about that in the interview. I thought I'd made some kind of grave career mistake. I thought I'm coming to this big company who's got all the latest tools and technology, and I can, I've got this greenfield opportunity to stand up an analytics team, but no Tableau. How am I going to do it, right? I mean, sure, there's like these other BI tools around, so I had to start asking around and, talking to analysts. How are you solving these problems today? And what I found is what I call today the analytics underground. You know what I'm talking about here?
The underground.
Yeah. We have these business groups that feel neglected by IT, and they've got these problems and questions that they need answers for, and they need them today, not 6 months from today. So the other thing is that, an answer every 6 months doesn't work because I have more than one question per day, and those kind of stack up. So the traditional sanction approaches weren't working. So how did they respond? Well, we saw them creating their own Excel data marts, call it, or SAS data farms, right? The business actually liked this. They felt like they had, a lot of flexibility to solve their own problems, and that sounds okay, but there's a pretty significant downside that I found is that there's a complete lack of consistency in results when you kind of have this database under your desk mentality. I couldn't find, two groups that could give me the same answer to the exact same question. So at this time, I'm feeling a bit perplexed, still like an outsider, still relatively new to this big organization. There's these BI tools that exist. No one wants to use them, and everyone's just kind of doing their own thing without telling anyone about it. And I remember feeling like this model doesn't seem right.
So we agree. We needed a better answer. And, I was in IT now, and my boss said, you did it in this group using these tools. It's got to be the process. So I looked at the process that we were using, that SDLC process. And there wasn't a lot of give on that because the tools required it. You couldn't build a model in Cognos without having a requirement of what they wanted to capture. So the tools ended up being a limiting factor to changing the process. So I started looking at new tools. And looking at the Gartner map, we're like, this one, same problem. This one, same problem. And my boss says, hey, we got this software. Someone bought it for a proof of concept. They never used it. Why don't you give it a try? Lo and behold, it was amazing. It changed everything.
And back in the business, I wanted a better option for my analysts to be able to answer questions faster. I wanted to make it easy for them to get their hands on the data without the need for sophisticated programming. And I knew from my last job that Tableau could potentially solve these problems for me. So I started asking around, why can't I just get a tool that lets me connect to all these different databases that exist within the bank?
And I was asking the questions, why can't I use a tool that allows me to build solutions in hours instead of weeks and months?
So why can't we just try Tableau?
Whoa, Tableau? Whoa! Tableau!
Excellent.
And so it all began. The story makes sense now?
And we hope you've had some of these whoa Tableau moments, and we've got some cool swag for you later, so be sure to come up. Oh, there's us. That's well. I missed it. So, great, right? It's awesome that Tableau offers a free trial and encourages analysts to go ahead and download it and get started today, right? Start solving problems. But if you've ever worked in a large enterprise like a bank, using internet feels like this. Yep, there I am. Sign up for the free trial.
I'll let you.
And violation of cybersecurity policy. And my boss probably got a nasty gram, and someone came and talked to me. So that's pretty much every. I think any internet page you go to, pretty much that's what happens.
Control.
So it became clear up front that we were not going to be able to go this alone, right? If we want to bring Tableau into this organization successfully, we're going to have to find a way to bring stakeholders on board, bring them into our booth, so to speak, if we're going to bring Tableau across a global organization like JP Morgan Chase.
So we come to the first person, the first group we had to bring into our booth, traveling back in time. That group was IT risk. You saw the big red X. We don't want you to do things. And we had to convince them that it was okay, because part of our process to get any new tools, we got to go through a lot of risk assessments. Their first question was, but you're going to let people connect to their own data? Yeah. That's IT's job. Why would we let them connect to data? And how are we going to assure they get the right joins and the right business logic? We can't trust them. So I had to remind them, thankfully Jason enlightened me to the fact that we in fact were doing this already, and in a much more uncontrolled environment. They were doing it. We gave them Toad, and they could figure out how to write bad SQL, sometimes really good SQL, but they could get the data out and cut and paste, the whole Control-A, Control-C, Control-V into Excel, and boom, they got data. Or if they were sophisticated, do ODBC direct, but they were doing it already. And risk was like, okay, that's a different way of looking at it. Yes, this is a better solution. You at least now have, we're leaving the data in the database and letting them analyze. So we succeeded. But then it came down to who should build it. Again, okay, we'll let them do some analysis, but who's going to build this? Because clearly, remember, IT knows best. We have all the answers. But what was really happening is that, the users, the business teams, were the ones feeling the pain, and they were ready to go. They were installing, they were getting Tableau approved, and they wanted to get it now that they had the approval to purchase it, and they were quickly embracing it, the people who were trying it, that we allowed to try it. And they knew Excel. So rows and columns made sense to them. Writing calculations made sense to them, except it was so much easier and a better experience. So then there's the issue of IT. Fortunately though, they thought it was just a fad. It was just another new tool, some startup, it would go away, and they would come back to good old Cognos or Business Objects, and our frameworks and our universes will be all they need. And come on, guys, we've spent millions of dollars already. Why do we need another tool? This tool's working just great. But, we had, and then of course the challenge back in 2011, and even today in some respect, finding good talent. They were learning it better than the IT guys because they knew the data, they knew how to write Excel and do all these things, and the IT people didn't know it. They were still stuck in the old school mentality. So we got their approval.
So I've got my hands on Tableau Desktop again, right? We're rocking and rolling, getting this out to analysts, but at some point it starts to feel like we're heading somewhere that might be a little familiar. I mean, in that first year alone, we went from those 10 licenses that Steve had to 400 desktop users by the end of the first year. But if all we were doing is just buying desktop licenses and letting every team go their own way, it became pretty clear that we're heading straight back to that analytics underground. Same thing we had in the Wild West days with Excel and SAS. So we need some level of central coordination, not too much. I don't have too much tolerance for that, but some level, we recognize there's a need there, right? We need some kind of shared server environment. Now, a lot of analysts probably would have been perfectly happy with something like a Tableau Reader, but if you're just slinging package workbooks around in Outlook, you're no better than Excel, right? So in this new model, we also are going to have business analysts and IT programs building dashboards and deploying them. So the question became, how are we going to coordinate it? Who's going to manage it? Who's going to run the server, Steve?
Well, the next big challenge clearly was we need to get IT management on board. Unfortunately, their initial reaction wasn't as positive as we thought. Blow them up. Maybe it wasn't quite that drastic, but there was some really strong pushback because in their minds, in the command control environment, why would we let them publish data connections? That's our job. Why would we allow them to publish content, dashboards, to an environment and let people see it without us approving it. They were freaking out. So they did maybe not want to blow us up, but it was a pretty stern reaction. So we had to bring IT management into our booth. We had to get them on board with us. And we looked at the processes. What were the processes today, that software development lifecycle? What worked? What was good about that? But would give them the flexibility that they wanted. And we wanted the IT management to realize it was about them getting answers, the outcomes. We couldn't do it fast enough. And essentially, we've just tripled our staff because now we got all these business people building things that we couldn't keep up with anyways. So we found this middle ground. So we purchased enough server to actually have dev, UAT, in production, and they were only allowed to touch dev. And the migrations to UAT to do the testing were managed by IT, and then to production, definitely IT, and it required a change management request. So nothing went in that wasn't audited. Again, that regulation, we want to make sure the regulators were comfortable. So it was a good marriage. So we changed the process, made it faster, and gave IT management what they wanted.
So now we've got a proper IT managed Tableau server environment, and analysts are coming out of the woodwork, raising their hands, wondering what is this cool thing called Tableau? How do I get my hands on it? And we started to notice something really interesting among that analyst community. Basically, the analysts that were using Tableau started actively seeking each other out to ask questions and share dashboards and visualizations they've done, kind of develop their own best practices. Now, this community was not something we'd ever seen before in the bank with analysts that use traditional analytics tools. Those kind of analysts actually tended to actively hoard and hoard their knowledge, so to speak, sort of feeling like their understanding of a particular programming language is the value they bring to the bank. But with the Tableau community, it was completely different. They seemed to have a bit of a deeper understanding that it was only in sharing and promoting best practices and how to use these tools that you can actually drive the organization to an analytics and data-driven model. So I don't think that a lot of people think that working at a bank sounds like a lot of fun, but at this time for the analysts that were using Tableau, it really definitely was. So instead of waiting around for IT to tell them, here's how you should be using this new piece of technology, this community were active participants in sort of defining their own future with it, right? As that Tableau user base grew and more analysts started using the platform, they were better prepared to engage with IT and be prepared as Tableau then got more broadly adopted across the enterprise. And we, of course, helped to foster this by working with our Tableau account team to do things like set up dedicated days where we could invite these analysts in at locations to introduce them to the tool, introduce them to each other, share what's been done, inspire them with best practices from other lines of business that they might not interact with. We do things like set up internal doctor sessions and host our own webinars and presentations that are very topic specific to that line of business needs.
So, we got risk, we got IT management, business loves it, they've built their own user community, things are going pretty well. We're approaching enterprise adoption. We're getting there, we're making progress. We've got IT's full attention, but again, they're still struggling with this. This is different. You've got a user community who's helping each other, and they're challenging us on maybe how we're doing things because they're wanting to think differently. And frankly, the business questions are a lot more complex than they ever encountered before because they were becoming empowered. They were learning things that they didn't even know. So we had to figure out how this model would fit into our current support infrastructure. And we needed to get the line of businesses on board because they're the ones ultimately that were paying for this. You saw the massive organization. They all have their own checks and balances that they have to be accounted for. And they wanted to make sure that the costs that they were paying, they were getting full value for. And how are we going to bring all these lines of business together into one server environment and really make sure it all works? It sounds dangerous. So we started doing things like implementing sites. Originally, we just had the default site, and everybody had the same playground. And that caused concerns. So we put in sites, and all of a sudden, teams of business users who didn't even know they were working on the same technology or solving similar problems were able to collaborate. Those meetings about setting up the sites were eye-opening. They didn't know, nor did their managers know, that there was multiple efforts, in fact, duplicative efforts going on. And it was amazing, so we're saving money and people are now further working together. We started putting in better monitoring tools so that we could make sure that the server was running optimally at all times. And we're looking for better ways to do load balancing so that, the first fifth day of every month in the banking world is called Business Day 5. And that is like chaos because everybody is refreshing every data source, every report, everything. So server performance goes way down. So we know that, and we're doing better at preparing for that. And we ultimately want to get a fair chargeback model so that the lines of business that Jason's group has multiple thousands of users because he's doing so many great things versus other groups that may have only 10 users. We had to come up with a model based on real CPU usage, disk usage, and how much it takes to manage their environment with all the migrations, so it's fair.
So I have to pay a lot more.
But you use it a lot more. You're benefiting so much
fair
more.
Enough, fair enough.
So this is a brand new paradigm that we had to embrace, and at the same time, IT had to take a hard look at itself. Because we had called ourselves experts or centers of expertise or BICCs. We had all these cool names, but they were really just checkboxes. Because really we wanted the business to think we cared, but we were really just checking a box. We really wanted them to just let us tell them everything and trust that we have their interest in mind. So we've taken a whole new approach. The Center of Excellence that I now run and have run for the last year is truly a partnership. We've joined the users group. We participate with the users group and we solicit feedback. Why are you doing this on our servers? How do you make the process even better? So we get their feedback and we can do a better job. And we're engaged with them. We're actually sitting down at the table as IT people when they're coming up with ideas and new data questions so we can anticipate and maybe even help. We're doing proof of concepts. I can't keep up. My team is doing so many POCs and pilot projects because now that the word's getting out that we trust each other, they want to start using Tableau. And we do mentoring, we run all the trainings, so we do multiple trainings a year on how to use Tableau and all those great things. And if needed, if you don't have a team, we'll build it for you. So we kind of do the full gamut. But really it's the trust. We had to build that trust that IT wasn't what it was before.
So we're really in the Tableau groove now, right? We've got a new paradigm going. We've got full support, more and more analysts every day we're onboarding. And you know how it feels like, everything's going right and awesome until all of a sudden it isn't. Well, several factors converged in the past few years. The London Whale, the rise of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in the wake of the financial crisis, that would all result in this intense focus on the controls environment at the bank. And this didn't just apply to banking operations groups, but every team, including analytics and IT. So in order to satisfy the regulators, and because it's the right thing to do for our customers, we had to go through every process, big or small, to make sure that it's well-defined and that the appropriate controls are in place to mitigate any risk. So we had this new character we had to bring into our booth that previously hadn't existed, someone called a control officer. And the kind of things that they care about is, do you have a well-defined process? And if you do, where are the points at which risk is being introduced? And then where can we apply controls to that process to mitigate that risk? So to address their concerns and bring them into our booth, we actually had to work to align processes across different analytic teams and go through a significant effort to reduce the manual touch points in dealing with data. And it was a painful process, to be honest about it. And at times it felt like, I'm dealing with this instead of, building cool things in Tableau like I want to be. But coming through that, we know that we're in much better shape as a result of going through that process today.
So where are we today? 2016. It's been an excellent 5-year journey. So what have we accomplished? I believe we have started the transformation, but it's not done. It's never done. We've got adoption. We have over 1,300, and actually I think my account exec said we're actually over 15, maybe 1,600 desktop users right now, and growing. And It is as fast as people can get their hands on it. They're not doing Excel dumps anymore because we've got over 120 projects on our server farm. We have 3 server farms, in fact, that we're looking to consolidate into one mega farm so that we can embrace the power of speed. Wouldn't you rather have 128 cores instead of 32 cores? I would. To give more power to it, right? But, and the users, we have tens of thousands of users now, 6,000 on one environment, and our other environments have multiple thousands each as well. And Jason told me, even just as we were flying down, he's got another 1,200 users he wants to add by the end of this month. We can't keep up. And that's a good thing. So things are changing. The culture has changed. But at the same time, not everything is perfect.
What? It's not?
It's not. So what are some of our challenges? Things we're still working through. Better migration process. Version control, yay, Tableau 10. Because users sometimes put things on dev and don't have a backup copy. Or we get something promoted and it wasn't what they wanted. So version control, big, important thing. And a migration process that works. We actually are purchasing tools to make that an automated process. So we can move everything in mass and have that entire thing logged and put into an audit table so the auditors can say what went into production on what day. Much better process. Metadata capture, a big thing for a bank. We have to show lineage. When you have a report that may go to the government or to an internal decision maker, you have to show that that data came from the SOAR, the proper SOAR, and has the right business rules. And we've added a new 4th environment. We had Dev UAT in production. The users want to do more self-service. So we built a build environment with enough capacity to handle that, where they can, on the fly, do their own analytics, whether it's from desktop, their mobile browser, anything. So we wanted to give them an environment to do more of that collaboration and sharing of data to ultimately get them answers faster.
I need my sandbox to play in.
You need your sandbox. We added that as well. So server monitoring, we also bought tools to help with monitoring. We want the business to know that things are out of control before they get the call from their users. This number is wrong, or this dashboard isn't refreshing. This data source seems old, it's stale. So we've purchased several tools to help do that so we can see when a particular group has a data source that's refreshing for hours when previously it took just minutes. We can go to them and say, what happened? What changed? Can we help you? Can we rewrite it? Can we look at that dashboard? It's running slow. You got a lot of users and it's running slow. Can we help you as an IT center of excellence so your users are happier? That's the type of engagement that is completely different. We're not just telling them no, we're telling them let's make things better. And new version cadence.
What version are we on, Steve?
All right. To be perfectly transparent, we're still on Tableau 8. Yes, we're on 8.2.7. So level of detail, I hear about it every single day. And there's Chase people here who are all saying, yes, we've been waiting.
That's a reality that does not exist for us. But we're going to change that, right?
Yes. Tableau 10 is coming in January. So we've actually already engaged all the teams to start testing Tableau 10.
We're very excited.
Yeah. Needless to say, I thought there'd be a lot of pushback because we're asking to actually work through the holidays. The fact that we're going to Tableau 10, they haven't really thought about that. And we've got to do a better job keeping up. We'll never be on the latest release, but we're on the alpha teams, we're on the beta teams now. We have set up sandbox servers so we can test new versions because we still have to go through all the security policy checks before we get a new version implemented, but we can't be on 8 when 9 and 9.3 and 10 and all these things are out there. We're going to do a better job. So how do we operate today? This is our environment. At a bank, we have standardized on every single data source that we can possibly have. We got them all. And we know that Tableau Desktop does a good job, and it does blending. And we love Maestro. I think for a lot of our users, they're going to love Maestro and not have to do as much blending. But we also use Alteryx as well. And he is actually an Alteryx expert. So his team uses it a lot and actually trains people on how to do it because we still have data all over the place. We have multiple data marts and warehouses, but it's still not all in one place. But ultimately, we've got these giant server farm that's going to continue to grow. And my goal is it just becomes JP Morgan Chase Analytics, and they don't even have to think about it. The users just come with questions and answer them.
So that's where we are today, but as Steve knows, my role in the business is to constantly ask him, great, what's next? How are we going to make it better? How are we going to take this to the next level?
Always.
I'm always trying to look ahead to figure out, how can we challenge the status quo and, continue to bring, new features, new enhancements to make our analysts' jobs and lives much easier. So these are some of the things that I'm concerned about, top of mind, that I want to make sure that we're addressing as we look forward. And I was very encouraged to see the Tableau roadmap yesterday at the keynote that kind of addressed a lot of these. So the first is in expanding governance. We want to make sure that the data sources that an ever broader number of analysts are connecting to, that we have faith in them, that there's some data steward with subject matter expertise in that has reviewed it and vouched for it, so that any analyst that comes in can have the confidence to know that the data is going to be correct. And we want to give them, some level of guardrails, right? So any kind of new analyst that comes in and adopts Tableau, that they can have sort of repeatable success. We don't want them to fail early and fail out of the tool. We also want to expand the use of the web authoring tool. So it was very cool to hear that yesterday, how at the end of next year, same functionality in desktop and the web. That's going to be huge. I mean, you saw from our server numbers before, and this is probably true of most organizations, you have 8 to 10 times as many server users as you do desktop. And not all, but probably many of those would really like the capability to go in and maybe ask the next question that a dashboard author didn't sort of think of in the dashboard they created. So having those capabilities to kind of in one click right from their browser go in and ask another question is going to be huge for them. We also want to make templates available for, again, these new analysts that are coming and adopting Tableau's templates that are specific to each subject area. So if you're in my team, it may be things like web funnel conversion, email, direct mail, and display ad conversion rates as well. And then finally, we want to enable Tableau mobile usage. We finally got all the BlackBerries out of the firm, and we're full in on this. Bring your own device model, right? So everyone's got their iPhones with them. We have a mobile device management framework. So we got to bring that to Tableau. We want everyone to be able to have the data they need at the time they need to make a decision. So again, a lot of awesome stuff we saw yesterday. But because we're a bank, the data is, securing the data is paramount. So we're going to have to work with our cybersecurity teams to make sure that we do it in the right way. The other major area that we're looking ahead to with Tableau is in the big data evolution. And now, at a bank that processes 14 billion card transactions a year and moves trillions of dollars around the world every day, data's always been big. So what I mean by this, that's why big data is in quotes, is just generally that refactoring of data out of traditional enterprise data warehouses and into the many flavors of Hadoop technology, which seems to be new ones popping up every day, promising to have faster results on top of that technology stack. And we want to find a way to make sure that these analysts who use and love Tableau can take that familiar interface and use it against these new platforms. And of course, that means balancing performance, right? Considering, how do we need to build aggregates for speed versus balancing that against, providing raw data so they can do low level of detail discovery analytics. And some of the stuff we saw about Hyper looks like it might be a real game changer in that regard. And of course, above all, we have to protect our data, right? Data security and extracts with Tableau has always been a challenge. We still work with that today. And so we have to balance the use of them for speed against the constant need to have defined access roles and monitoring for access against personally identifiable and sensitive data.
So, the end of our journey. What are some key lessons for your Tableau adventure?
So my first piece of advice would be to partner early with your IT and business stakeholders, that if you just try to go Tableau alone, you're not going to get very far.
And remember, they're people, not users.
Right?
Second, promote a community. And the IT people need to be part of that community because that social collaboration just means everybody comes up to speed faster and it builds that momentum. I mean, you're here, you feel the buzz at a conference. Our community calls, our Tableau days, it's exciting. And we want more of that. It breeds success.
And don't be afraid to ask why. Steve will attest to the fact that I'm challenging things every day about why we don't have certain features turned on or why we're not on the latest version. You have to not be afraid to sort of challenge the historic assumptions that your organization may have made and ask yourself, is there a better way to do this? And constantly fight that uphill battle and pushing to improve the way things are done.
And most importantly, we need to be excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes.
So it has been a most excellent adventure indeed, and thank you for listening to our story. We encourage you to party on tonight at Data Night Out, and we are available for questions after, because I'm sure your journey, or we can stand here and take your questions, we started early, is very similar. And we do ask that you fill out the survey, give us some feedback. Is this a message that resonates, is meaningful? And if you do want to get a hold of us, this is our contact information. We're both on Twitter. We're actually promoting Whoa Tableau. We do have buttons. So if you want to hashtag Whoa Tableau, let's see if we can get a lot of buzz going out there.
So we've got a mic at the back of the room. So if you got a question, I guess raise your hand. We'll get the mic to you since we're recording this. I think we got some at the front. Bring that up. There we go.
Sorry, I've got 2 questions, but I'll try and be quick. The first one is, you mentioned the implementation of process controls in the analyst community. Can you tell us a bit more about what that looked like? And the second question I've got is, where you're publishing sort of, I guess, formally endorsed dashboards, are you imposing any level of visualization standards over those?
Yeah, we do. Do both of this, all in reverse order, right? Visualization standards, a lot of the stuff that Steve mentioned is, some of it's voluntary, right? We try to impose a lot of that in the upfront trainings that we'll do. So I actually came to find Tableau. I said I've been an early user since like version 5. I found it through Stephen Few, right? I'm a big fan of like best practices and data viz. So whenever I'm teaching people, that's sort of the first thing we start with before we even get into a tool, and we kind of have that training as part of it. But then we don't want to scare people away, so we let them get involved, and everyone goes through that kind of arc where the first thing they do is try to make it be like Excel. They're like, I need a table, and I need colored cells and everything. And we let them kind of work through that. We know the path they're going to take, and right then we'll get together with them and say, well, have you thought about trying it this way, and drag a few things around. Then it sort of opens their mind to it, and we can kind of teach them some of those best practices. And then we offer them as like reviews. Your team, I know, will review dashboards, both from a performance and a, is this kind of communicating the information as effectively as possible.
The one standard we have implemented is that no more TWBX files, no more packaged workbooks, because from a server administrator, I have a hard time knowing what's going on, and I have more control if it's a data source and a visualization separate. And that's really helped our server environment. It was a little pushback initially, but from us giving them better service, it helped us.
Yeah, and as far as the first question, which was process, for most teams it actually was actually defining a process. Most didn't have it, right? Analytics teams just did whatever they had to. Everything's a fire drill, right? Like some executive asks a question, it's a fire drill, and they throw something over and nobody even checks if it's right. So it was really about like defining a process, as simple as like doing process maps to say, if we're going to take a dashboard, all the way to production, what are the steps involved, and then what controls we put there, what kind of like sign-offs are appropriate to have at different spots. So it was really like actually defining something from scratch for most groups, I would say.
Right. But we have actually looked at streamlining that. So our build environment is for the teams that are a little more advanced. We have UAT, but they don't use it because they're actually doing so much upfront hands-on with their business users. They've already got the test. So we're expediting that to allow them to go faster to production, if not direct from build to production, so they get things done faster. That's that constant pushback and understanding what's not working. So.
Cool.
There was a question up here, or it's got a mic.
Regarding the chargeback model, did you have any concerns that there might be some pushback or have an adverse impact based on usage if you're charging back to the business by asking them to use Tableau?
Well, it comes down to value, right? So if they've got a large user base and they're using those dashboards every day, there's got to be a value associated with that. So it's talking with the project administrators or their project teams to understand and communicate that. We don't go into it and just say, this is your cost. We have that conversation up front so they know what to expect and that value is assessed. So, front.
And we got the mic coming up. Yeah, we got some up here.
You talked about getting the actually executive users. How far up the organization are we talking about, and what are you getting them to do?
So I have dashboards that get reviewed. So Gordon Smith runs the consumer and community bank. So I have dashboards that get reviewed by his executive teams, all his directs, which would be president of the retail bank, president of card, my boss, who's the chief marketing officer, Kristen Lemkow. The kind of things that they look at are sort of like bank-wide things about like overall customer trends. So I give them things that they take into their weekly management meetings every week. So, and I actually see on the server usage that they're going in and looking at server. We do print out stuff still. We do print out for their meetings, but they are going in. I can see it. So it's pretty cool.
We just went live with the dashboard a couple weeks ago. It's actually being used by Jamie. So, and he's monitoring, you know, the financial crisis. There's a lot of factors that caused that. So we've got dashboards that are real time. It's a live query. So they can constantly see what's happening in the markets. Very critical to his finance organization, and he has a view into it as well. So it goes to the highest level. But not, I wouldn't say that's very small compared to most of what's built. It's departmental.
And do any of them actually intend hitting the edit button on the server and actually going and changing it? I mean, do they have desktop?
Any of those users? No.
They would be on server. Yeah.
No, I don't think I would ever. It'd be an interesting conversation, but.
You guys mentioned you guys use Cognos and business objects. I was just wondering, do you see Tableau replacing some of those traditional functions, like just?
We have every tool. So you have to recall, JP Morgan Chase was built through mergers and acquisitions, right, over many years. So we at some point, like literally have any name a BI tool, and it was in use someplace. But we've been systematically kind of winding down a lot of the legacy ones, right? Yeah. So Cognos is one that still exists for kind of traditional reporting, still supported by, I think, an adjunct of yours, right, another peer on your team. But we do see, like, most analysts now are sort of asking, like, can Tableau do this first before, like, then saying, oh, maybe this needs to be served by one of the older tools. People want to see if they can use it in Tableau first, just because they see a lot of the cool work that we do. They see that the executives use it and get excited about it. So there's just that kind of, like, brand awareness of, oh, if I put my data, in Tableau, people are going to care about it versus put it in Cognos and it dumps reports at 7 a.m. to email every day and no one reads them.
But what happens sometimes, we had a project where they wanted Cognos replaced with Tableau because Cognos was taking a long time to make a model change. Back to that same problem. They're like, well, can't we do this faster in Tableau? So our first goal was to replicate the Cognos report in Tableau and generate a PDF that's FTP'd to the site. And it's like, really, that's not what Tableau's about. So I actually, because of my nature and my personality, I actually built a demo of a different way of viewing that data and actually designed it for the phone. And the chief risk officer now uses it on the train every day. So that's that cultural transformation. I have a PDF table, but if I can do this and see it every day from my phone, I want more of that now. So that's a lot of times how it happens. Yeah, there's still a place. We support Cognos. I mean, for bursting, we don't do bursting or anything. Well, there's the traditional type of reporting. I don't want tables of numbers coming out of Tableau if I can at all help. So we have Cognos and business objects for that as needed.
Thanks, Larry. Got a mic runner.
Did you ever implemented the Cognos and Tableau integration? Did you got any requirement? Like in my organization, we are using the Cognos and Tableau. But
do we use them together?
Yes, there are some cases businesses.
We have groups that are doing both, and we actually have a decision tree now. We've written an app in Tableau that'll ask some questions, and it dynamically changes based on their responses to help them make the decision on what tool is going to best work for them. So we let them choose the tool based on our knowledge of what tools do what best. But there are some teams that still want both, and we do that.
Okay. So if you have a dashboard and the Tableau, can it be drilled down to the Cognos detailed report kind of thing?
We're not doing that yet. We do have some groups that are looking at ways to do that. Can we drill through? There's even the option of connecting to a Cognos framework from Tableau. Haven't really embraced that yet. But generally, the user groups are separate. So you've got your Cognos reporting, which serves one group, and then the dashboards end up serving a little bit of overlap, but more of a management, group wanting to do overview. So
It's more up here, Larry.
As far as security goes, how do you guys mitigate the risks with early development within the company?
So early development, so everybody, we don't stop desktop users from connecting to data. They have to get the right access privileges to connect to data. But then when they publish to server, we require a functional ID that isn't their ID. And we use Active Directory groups for all access administration. So to have access to server, you have to, and the roles are set up based on your group membership. So, and that's been very successful. And people don't like the fact that they're asked for a login because it's all part of the web experience. So from a server perspective, it's click and go. And even on the mobile, we use the good application right now for a mobile experience until we get Tableau Mobile. They only have to enter the password once and they're good. No pun intended. So yeah, does that answer your question?
It's just like with ongoing IT, they're always going to be, I guess, backlash against customer data.
So
Yeah,
It's
so we secure the data separately from the dashboards and all. So if I've got Tableau Desktop, I can't connect to anything until there's at least 2 checks on every data source. There's like a manager level check and there's like an information owner check. So I basically have to get 2 people sign off before I even can connect to a database. And then at that point, they don't care like what tool you use to go top of it. Like maybe I'm just a SQL developer, I'm writing a query. Maybe I'm a Tableau developer, that doesn't matter to them. So we secure the data separately from Tableau. And then if there is sensitive data, Steve mentioned, that'll be handled through a FID and Active Directory groups with the appropriate kind of provisioning so that all that passes seamlessly. And this is the great thing for our users is like because it's all handled through Active Directory, like you said, they just click in and then they either get blocked and get nothing if they're not in it, right? Or they get it if they're provisioned to the appropriate group. So.
And the auditing tools we bought allow us to see what they're doing, which we didn't able to see before. And when they're starting to bring in PI content like account number or name, we have conversations. Because extracts especially, we don't want PI content in there. And so we're doing a hybrid approach. Extract aggregates and have a corresponding live connection that you're pulling it live from the database and let the database owners handle that risk. So my team doesn't have to manage that. So back there.
How are you governing the data that's created out of Alteryx, which is nothing but your intermediate data layer that you're creating, right, before it goes to a dashboard?
Yeah, so it would follow the same process as anything else, right? So we have kind of a central like data governance group. We have a metadata repository. So Alteryx is just another tool. It just happens to be a lot easier for end users to use. It integrates directly with Tableau. So we'll build the workflows, but then we'll kind of go through and certify it and make sure we understand what we're putting in. We'll document everything, and we use and Alteryx makes this all very easy and actually pretty simple. We'll have it write logs off like when we run it, so we know when the workflow was run. All that metadata from where you're pulling. So let's say an Alteryx file is connecting to 2 databases and 3 Excel files. You basically drag a field info tool in at the end and write it off to a SharePoint site, right? So I know when I ran this, here's where everything came from. Here's every transformation that happened along the way. So I have kind of full traceability into where I got it, what I did with it within that Alteryx process, and then when it got loaded to Tableau server.
And we're also working on purchasing Alteryx server. So we'll have, and my team will be governing that as well. So following a lot of the best practices. And this is where we gave Jason some leniency. He can write directly to production Tableau server with Alteryx. It didn't make sense for him to write to dev and then have to promote it. We have a process, we build a trust relationship with his governance of Alteryx usage, and we allow him to write to, not everyone does that, he's the only group right now, but he had to prove that his processes kept us protected.
And that's how we can sort of test out new operating models, try them out, and this goes back to what I was saying about sort of challenging assumptions, trying new things, right? Improving them out on the small scale before you kind of go all in on something. So,
Okay, one more. So how are you governing the licenses that you have? You said you have over 1,600 licenses. So how are you governing it?
Not well. So people leave the bank, people change roles and don't need Tableau anymore. So we're actually working hard with our Tableau account team to recoup licenses that aren't being used. And with the new features of Tableau 10, we actually are now incorporating, so when you initiate a Tableau desktop and you publish, there's a way to log that on server so we can actually see who's actively using desktop. And we're going to start doing those type of things. But there's no easy way. We know there's new things coming with the way they're going to do licensing. We've had influence on how that's going to be, so we'll have more insight into that usage. But right now, honestly, we've got purchase licenses that are sitting idle. So we're cleaning up those license keys and putting them back into users' hands. So.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, as far as licensing, like we just want to make sure it's easy to get the tool into analysts' hands. We don't want that to be a barrier, right? So, but these are some, getting efficiency on the stuff you already have is definitely, the kind of cleanup task we need to do.
Okay. On my long list of things to do better. We use metadata tools.
So the question was about metadata tools. So we use Ab Initio, I believe. I don't know the name of their specific product, but.
And there's no, so we're working with that vendor to build an interface to the XML output of the data connections and then the XML of the TWB files so we can get those loaded in. So.
For a beginner who's building reports that you've described, very similar reports, and now that I've attended some of these creative classes, are there any locations on the web that gave you some type of creative inspiration for these type of reports that I could check out? Any favorites?
So I would say like my biggest inspiration comes from like the blogging community. So like the Zen Masters on stage, all of them sort of have blogs. You can use, I use Feedly, which is an RSS feed aggregator, and I have like 60 of them or so. So if you go to feedly.com/mac/Tableau, it's a public one. I make it available to everyone, so you can actually subscribe to mine, and you'll get all of theirs. So I must read, I don't know, a dozen Tableau articles a day, kind of the cool things they're doing. A lot of that I would say is more on that like inspirational phase, because a lot of the things they do are very one-off, right? Like I took this data set, I did this Makeover Monday thing, and here's this. And I'm like, okay, that's a cool technique, but I need something that can refresh automatically and work across thousands of users and, kind of twisting Tableau 100 different ways. Like, it doesn't feel like it's going to work for me. So it's usually for like just inspirational stuff. I like the way this kind of thing looks. So for me, it's that like blogosphere. Twitter's awesome too. All those guys are also on Twitter, so follow them there, and that's how you can usually find examples of their work.
Yeah, specific ones: DataBlick, VizCandy. There's a whole.
Yep.
Yeah, check out our Twitter page, and they're all on there. So I follow him. He does all the reading. I just get the reduced version.
We have a server set up kind of like similar to yours, RD, UAT, prod. You're finally going to be going to 10, you said.
Mm-hmm.
What can you explain a little bit your strategy of getting there to prod?
So, how we're going to Tableau 10? So
yeah, how are you going to Tableau 10? Because basically your RD server, because all the users or people are still actively developing, it's really a quasi-prod server.
So
we're taking the easy way out. So brand new environment.
Right. So we're actually building, we've invested, and part of the reason we're behind is we couldn't get hardware. We needed bigger hardware, bigger iron to run Tableau 9, and because of a lot of other priorities, we didn't get it. So we're building Tableau 10 server environments, all 5 of them, dev, UAT, production, build, and sandbox, and we're moving content over. So there is no upgrade. So, and some teams are looking at it going, I can start over? So, Chris right here, he's starting all over. He's a Chase employee, and he's basically going, I'll just take what I have, and I'll publish what I want to the new environment. Just give me Tableau 10. So, but everyone else, we're moving it over for, now. Yes.
Cool. All right. I know we're past the top of the hour.
We do have buttons if anyone wants.
Yeah, come up and get a button and feel free.
We need one big audience participation. Can we do this? 1, 2, 3. Whoa! Tableau. Thank you.
Excellent.